Thanks, everybody. Those of you who I don't know, I'm Daniela. I am the VP of Platform Enablement here at Element 451. I'm actually really excited about our next session, not only because our presenter is a friend and a colleague, he's actually the wizard behind the curtain. So I don't think anybody knows just how much Timothy Davis, our engagement analyst, does for Element 451. You've seen him on live support. You've seen him in meetings. He has answered all of your questions at some point. He probably knows all of you by name. But today he's going to talk about the importance of automation and, more importantly, how to pronounce Zapier or Zapier. We don't know. We're not sure. But Timothy's going to demystify it.
I'm not going to answer that. I can't speak to that.
I know.
It's actually, I don't know what to say about that.
Please welcome Timothy Davis.
I don't know the answer either. Thank you so much, Daniela. We definitely are friends. And you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, we are friends. Hi, everyone. So good to see you today. I've been running around all day with like AV stuff behind the scenes too. So that's been fun. So it's good to take some time and connect with everybody and talk a little bit about Zapier and about automating everything. So I have some ideas that I want to share, and there have been some great questions in the Wova app. There's another one. Oh my gosh. Is it Wova or is it Hoova? What is it? Did somebody should start a poll in Hoova. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So this is like a Dr. Seuss themed conference app. They could really lean into that. I at the top here, I do want to open it up to y'all because there's a million ways we could take this conversation, and we could talk about automating a million different things. But I would like to hear from y'all what you want to hear about. If there's a specific use case that you have in mind, or if there's a general concept. There's already some questions in Wova. I'm going to switch back and forth interchangeably. But if we could actually get a runner mic for anybody that wants to maybe shout out a question so that I can kind of tailor what we talk about to what's relevant to the room. I did want to also, just for our knowledge, pull up the questions that have been asked so far so that you know what I'm referencing while we get that microphone.
Didn't know he was going to put me to work. So
let's run around. You're not, yeah. Okay. Could you please share your methods for training staff on automation tools and software? And then also, in a similar vein, from someone who's just getting started, where do we begin? Are there any schools currently using Microsoft Power Automate? If you've talked to me before this session, I've mentioned Power Automate in every single conversation, so we'll definitely touch on that. And then what are the most popular Zapier add-ons that you recommend? I actually brought a list, so we can check out that list. Is there anything else that anybody would like to just throw out really quick that we can speak to that's interesting to you? There's a use case. We had some use cases around documents, how to get documents signed. That was an interesting one. Yes, sir.
Perhaps, what is it and why do I need it?
Great question. So, like, what are we doing here?
what a way to start. What a way to start, Timothy.
We can absolutely do that. Anybody else real quick?
What are some quick wins that you have to get people on board for using it?
Bingo. Great. Over here. This was my, this is a trick right now. You guys are basically just presenting. So, and I just get to ask questions.
My biggest thing is like how to automate different things where I can track and follow up with my counselors. Like if they're like kind of like double checks.
So like auditing and debugging and like logging what was actually automated. In automation situations, sometimes like things happen that were not expected, and so you want to like look back at that. Do you automate stuff right now? What are you using? Like Element workflows or?
Yep,
Element workflows.
For
okay,
the most part.
Great. Yep.
Yeah, and just being able to like, hey, are my counselors following up with conversations? Are they doing different things like that?
Absolutely. Okay, great.
We will only accept more questions from this side of the room, so I don't have to run to that one.
And ask a question. I'm kidding. I'm picking on you. I'm sorry. Anybody else, real quick? Okay, Cody, what's up? Oh, nice one. Okay, why use Zapier instead of using Element imports or Element workflows, Element rules? There are some nuances and differences there. Off the top of my head, that the Element, Zapier flows, Zapier zaps are have a few more like computational tools, like looping through a list, or some more like robust conditional logic and variables that are just not currently in Element automations. So because you have all the same actions, you can kind of just configure the same things that you configure in workflows, but just over in Zapier. Okay, those are some great questions. Of course, if there's any more questions, please feel free to throw up your hand. I would love to hear from you and make sure that we're speaking relevant content to you.
And I need to get my steps in.
Absolutely, yeah. Danielle, you got your step tracker on. What are you sitting at right now? I don't even want to look. I'm scared. Okay, so when we want to talk about automating everything, I think the first thing to talk about is not just the method there, so like the tactics, the tricks. Of course, I said I brought a list. There's a list. We can also talk about the management, so like how do we train, also how do we administer, how do we log, how do we debug. But the first thing I want to talk about is actually the mindset. When I was in, I think it was my freshman year of high school, I had this really cool science teacher in a really cool science classroom. Her desk was like at the front of the room, and it was like the fully wrapped, like traditional American science classroom look with like the wood drawers and everything, but the black countertop. And her like desk was over here, and she had like a sink station, and then just a huge like open space. The story: she gets a loaf of bread out one day, and a jar of peanut butter, and a jar of jelly, and a knife. And she asked this classroom of freshmen, tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. First smart alecky kid, definitely wasn't me, throws a hand up, is like, open up the bread, get a slice of bread out. And so she like rips open the bag. Hilarity ensues, like calamity. People are like falling out of their chairs. She's killing it up there. Okay, put some peanut butter on the bread. She like scoops it out with her finger, blop, So the whole idea there was to think in detail, or we might say think programmatically. So programmatic thinking is a concept that we get from computer science. It's the idea that everything is a process. We can break down everything we do within our work, within even sometimes our lives, the rest of our lives, into a set of steps, a flow, a function. That's a very fancy computer science term. If you ever call a process a function, you know what you're talking about. But the idea is that we can take a set of inputs, or maybe even no input, and produce an output. Right? And so that is where we need to start when we talk about automating everything. The first thing we need to understand is to scope what we are automating, to put parameters around it and say, this is what we're taking in, and this is the expected output. When we have a general idea, a vague idea of like, we need to accomplish getting people, this type of information or whatever, like that's not specific enough. We need to know it's this specific information written to this field. It's this specific document. It's this specific email campaign or whatever that needs to be delivered, that needs to be personalized. So my advice to you as you're training your people or as you are developing this skill set yourself, think like a programmer. Build small, right? Take everything down to the smallest steps. Don't just rip open the bag. Take the zip tie off with your left hand, and with your right hand, undo the twist, right? So that detailed. Go to that level. And when you start to do that, okay, it's like, wow, we've got a lot of steps. That's why you build small. Build one thing and then another thing and then another thing. That is the iterative process. Build the first thing. Get the first thing done. The way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? So do one thing at a time and build off of that. And then finally, test frequently. Test. If you've ever been in live support and you're like, can Element do this? Or if you go to an Ask an Expert session and you ask, Eric will probably razz you about this if you ask Eric, can Element do this? But like the only thing that we do in live support is just try it. You're like, hey, can we do a thing? I don't know. Let me try it. Let me log in. Let me punch this thing in and test it on a record and do it. That's how we learn. And that's going to be the process for Element. That's the process for Zapier. That's the process for any other automation tool that you'll be using. So get comfortable with the idea of testing. Get comfortable with test records. You're going to have your suite of test records that you've labeled or whatever, work on them like that. So any thoughts, questions about thinking like a programmer? Anything else that I can speak to in that vein? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Testing prod. Yep. Testing prod is very tricky. You're right. Absolutely right. So one of the main, yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole list of reasons that we could get into about why you should not test in prod. I do not disagree with you, but given that you have the environment that you have, what I suggest when you are testing an element, if for those of you that this is relevant to, is don't use a live email, right? And also put conditions on your automations, like if you have a drip campaign that you don't want your test record, if you have, if you want to write it to an external system or whatever, make sure that you compartmentalize that as much as you can so that you're not sending data on that record, or have live data on that record that's going to interfere with the rest of your processes. You can also there's also a reporting concern in there. We don't want to report bad numbers because our test records are mixed in your reporting. You also need to control for that and make sure that you have variables on that test record that you can easily exclude. That's a very niche question, and I could speak more on it. And I think you asked that before in a prior, did you ask a similar question last year's Engage? I'm calling you out on this. No, it's a valid concern. It's 100%. Okay. Anything else about thinking like a programmer? Yeah, that's good. Let's move on. Okay, method. Here's my list. Zapier has a ton of different integrations. Zapier is a platform that helps this thing connect to that thing. This thing will have a set of triggers. So an element, our triggers are a label is added, a user joined a segment, a user changed territories, a user started or submitted an application, triggering events, right? And then you have a set of actions. Element also has a set of actions within Zapier, as do all of the other apps that Zapier integrates with. So you pair a trigger from Element with an action from another app or vice versa. This thing happens, it does this thing over there. And then when you have, for example, an Element user, if you have a triggering event for that user, you can get some of that user's data, like their unique identifier or their email or something that would be useful for that automation, and bring it over to the other system, manipulate it in some way. First example, I probably jumped again on the first example slide. I feel like I pulled that punch. Teams. A lot of us are using Microsoft 365, right? We've got Outlook emails. We've got OneDrive. Okay. At Element, we use Slack, and we write everything to Slack. So live support conversations, if you've been in there, those are also getting duplicated over into Slack because it's searchable, because some people don't have live support seats, if you're familiar with how that works, but they do have access to Slack. If you have scenarios like an Element form gets submitted, you need to let another team know, or they want a log of that, they want a debug log of that, write it to Teams, write it to a Teams channel. Teams gets annoying because of there's this DM and that DM and this DM. Think of it in terms of topical, create topical channels, or even just a simple alerts for Element form submissions channel, write it in there. Some other ideas there. Okay, Element appointments, also an interesting one. Element decision checklist, right? You can use a variety of those triggers to write directly into Teams and log that for users who are maybe not as invested in Element or are not using it on a daily basis, but need to stay up to date. It can function as an alert. A lot of folks ask for do we have notifications in Element? Do we have email alerts in Element? In some cases we do, for tasks, on the due date, but this is a way that you could basically create your own alerts for any of those triggers. Okay, cool. Outlook. And I was thinking about the document situation again, Marika. I wonder if there's an action for documents in Outlook, you can attach a document to an Outlook email, but there's a lot of different actions there. How do I know? How do I look this stuff up? I just Google it. And that's kind of the process as you're testing. So Element appointment, you could add more people to an event. So for Element, you could only register one person. You could pass that over to Outlook and add whoever else needs to be there. You could also have an LLM generated out of office response. That's not related to Element at all necessarily, but you could create a personalized response to people when they email you and you're out of office. Okay, moving on. OneDrive, Element document upload. If you had form submission documents that you wanted to write back up, of course, you're going to run into document restrictions as you move them around systems and FERPA, et cetera. So that might not work in some situations. You probably have a dedicated document solution, but OneDrive is there as well. It has a lot of actions related to documents in your files. Okay, YouTube. There's an interesting one. A lot of folks are using YouTube, right? You're probably putting campus tour videos on YouTube. So we're getting more into the realm of marketing. Log video views and comments in Excel. Right, that's a big one. Those are really, really difficult for our marketing folks. If you've ever run, YouTube campaigns or tried to really do YouTube analytics, getting documents or getting views and comments out of that system is really hard. So you could try Zapier for that. And then you could also, I put this one in. I might be a little out of pocket here, but an Element form submission into a custom playlist that's based on their major, that might work. I will be totally honest. I am out of pocket because I didn't test it, but it might work. Okay, Facebook. This is my favorite one. So Facebook has a couple of different actions. One of them is for conversions. And the one that I really want to point out, this is for the marketing folks. Facebook, Instagram have the ad clicks that take you to a Facebook form that populates their Facebook information in the form for them, right? So it doesn't take them to a web page. So like the load time is really fast. And it doesn't, you don't have to wait on like the in-app browser or whatever. It fills out the form. That form can go straight into Element. I see you reacting to that. That's cool, right? You know what I'm talking about. That's really cool. So yeah, you could have a like a pretty sophisticated admitted enrollment like conversion process based on Facebook lead information. The other one that I wanted to talk about, and this is another one for the marketing ones, which is where some of my older experience comes from, is you can use Zapier to write deep funnel conversions back to Facebook ads. One of the things that Facebook ads does is it wants to optimize campaigns around the actions that people who click your ads take, right? So like you can optimize on impressions. So that's just like viewing the ad, but that's a really bad way to optimize your ads. You're going to be wasting a ton of money doing that. A better solution is optimizing around clicks or like web page views, right? But what if, I don't know, you could write back to Facebook that a student not just clicked, not just submitted the form, and was admitted to the institution or even enrolled. Like that is a really meaningful conversion that you could pass back to Facebook to let it know, optimize conversions based on this student. It's going to look at all the psychographic information related to that student that it's collected through the social graph and have a really robust campaign for you there. So something to think about with that. Same thing with Google Analytics. And this would be relevant for reporting in Google Analytics. If you wanted to tie back meaningful conversion events that are deep in the funnel for admissions and see those alongside your web events in Google Analytics, or if you've got like Google Analytics and Google Looker Studio, you can have a system. I saw you nodding over there to use Analytics and Looker. Yeah. So we don't use Google GA4 reports, right? We go straight into Looker because you can actually like use it. That's another conversation for another time. But again, same concept. You can see your meaningful conversions. You can see your meaningful metrics alongside your really high funnel metrics like website views. Okay. Last one, Instagram. I saw a couple actions in here that I thought were kind of interesting. Instagram comment to a Teams channel, bringing Teams back around. So like you're logging meaningful comments on Instagram into Teams so that people can review them and see what's being said. I also saw like cross posting. That was one of the solutions that they recommended for a lot of different social apps. Was like, if you post over here, you can use Zapier to like cross post over there. And that's really helpful when you're out of like the Meta ecosystem. Because like on Facebook, you can cross post to Instagram. They've been doing that forever. But from like Twitter, you can't cross post to Blue Sky. Anybody on Blue Sky? On Blue Sky? Thank you. Yeah, great. Yeah, Blue Sky's pretty cool. I've tried it. TikTok, Instagram Reels to TikTok, right? Those are cross platforms, but you can use Zapier to like move that content around. Okay. And then finally, Canva. Anybody using Canva? Marketers? Yeah, exactly. Canva is so cool. And you can, with Canva, like you can do variable data, right? That variable data that you could plug into a graphic, you could get that variable data from Zapier, from Element, from whatever, and spin up custom graphics, personalized graphics right within Canva. What was the other one I said there? Custom birthday graphic, Ella generated image or poem. That'd be fun, right? And this, I didn't even put this in there. Now that I'm thinking about this, like, I'm kicking myself. Some other actions within Zapier are to write directly to ChatGPT or to make requests like Gemini or whatever. So if you're doing image generation over there, prompting or whatever, you can send a prompt as part of your Zapier flow and then pass that prompt into whatever the final destination is. And then finally, the last one I put there was like territory change. You could do like a meet your advisor graphic. Be kind of cool. Okay. Some ideas there. There's my list. The other thing that I wanted to push you on as we look to what's next for Zapier is what they're calling Zapier MCP. Remember that anagram there, MCP, that stands for Model Context Protocol. And that is the developing framework protocol by which the internet is currently building, developers around the internet are currently building out tools for large language models to access. So one of the problems that we've run into with large language models is that while they have, a vast general knowledge, they don't have specific knowledge. So we have the knowledge base, and then they also can't take actions on our behalf. So what Zapier has been building and what the rest of the internet through MCP, which is not proprietary to Zapier, is a protocol by which LLMs can access a set of tools and perform a set of actions. So Element is also looking at bringing MCP to Copilot. So any automations that you had in Zapier could also be triggered right there natively within Element 451. Petter gets to talk about that more tomorrow. I was like, could we talk about it together? He was like, no. So I get that. I get Zapier. Okay, the other one that I really wanted to point out was Power Automate. Power Automate is basically Zapier within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So if you have Outlook, if you have Teams, if you're using Word and Excel, Power Automate is likely already part of your package. I don't think it's on like the minimum tier, and they're always changing the pricing model. I don't know anything about that. But there's like a tier where it begins to be offered and is available, but it functions in the exact same way. There's a step, there's a trigger, there's some sort of action performed, and you orchestrate it into a flow, and you're able to access a lot of the similar features. I will say Zapier has a much more robust native ecosystem. So they just, you search for Canva and there's already actions there. Power Automate is not as robust in that sense. There's not as many users on it, but it has the same core functionality, meaning that if you are familiar with writing API calls or you are familiar with vibe coding, writing API calls, that's a shout out to Artist's session earlier, you could absolutely configure your own stuff to do that. And for example, Element does not have native support in Power Automate at this time. It's very difficult to become a Microsoft partner to be able to do that. Oh, well. But it has API call functionality. So you go to Element's API documentation, you copy that, you paste it into ChatGPT, and you're like, format this for Power Automate. It needs this, and now you've got an action. Something to try. All right, what else we got? Oh yeah, Power Automate also has desktop flows. This makes it unique from Zapier. You can add it to your desktop, and you can click around, and it will function as your mouse and keyboard. So if you've got a lot of offline tasks, which we often do in higher ed, we often work with local files, we often work in local drives. If there's something really tedious that you do or have to loop through, you can create a desktop flow that would basically do that for you. So click through, copy that, paste it here, whatever, add this app, pull up the calculator, I don't know. But it basically has access to your desktop. It can function in any way that you would on your desktop right there for you, automated. Okay. Any questions about those? I would also like to open up to y'all again. Any other cool automations that y'all have configured? Anybody using Power Automate? I've mentioned it a few times, but I've never heard it. Back there, what do you do? What do you automate? Yeah, Active Directory writing. Yeah, so like you could spin up an email. Yeah, and then you could send out an email campaign in Element to say, here's your new student email. Easy peasy, maybe. I don't know. That's cool though. There was another hand up in the back. Did you say you're using Power Automate? I wanted to pick on you too. What are you automating? Absolutely. Yeah. So then you write that like into an Excel sheet or something like that? Yeah. And then do you have in Excel, like you automatically like aggregate it to get the numbers that you need for those particular forms? Yeah. That's like doing that manually takes forever. It's like miserable. So cool. Very awesome. Anybody else want to share cool automation? You right here. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. So apps is that's like the larger components basically, right? Like it can access different services around Microsoft more than just Power Automate, right? Okay. Okay, cool. Do you give access to that to like people in like admissions or the registrar or like folks that are using the day-to-day work of the institution? Okay. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. That's very cool. Anybody in Zapier? Any Zapier users? Simo over here, what do you got? So like they fill out a quiz thing. Is it like a more like interactive like UI? They get to like, it's fun. Yeah. Yeah. So you email that out through Element and then they get it. They open it up on their browser. That's really cool. And then it's right there. Cool. And you like write it to custom fields? Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Very cool. All right. Anybody else real quick before we talk about management? So Zapier is a kind of open SaaS tool. Anybody can go out and create their own account. You can get a free account. You can start creating your own Zaps and connecting your own thing. But when you start working on it at the institution level, you want to treat it like a procurement of any other software, really. Mainly, the main things that you're concerned about, obviously, security. That's the most one. You don't want people to have access to write into apps that they shouldn't have access to write into. You want to have solid security policies. But you also want to make sure that people have the proper access, right? So, like, nobody's got their personal Gmail account in the middle of some automation that's, like, passing student data around or something like that. So you want to be concerned about those things. You also, I think there's a debugging use case there for logging, right? If somebody's got an automation on their personal account, you definitely don't want to do that. Because if it's doing something that's unexpected or whatever, and you can't see it, you can't fix it. And then finally, learning, right? As you build apps and as you take reps in that process of trying to automate your processes, it's helpful to be able to see what others have done. So don't be cagey about what you have built. Show that to others and allow them to look over at least what you've done. Maybe not edit it, but at least see what you've done and how you configured it so that they can learn alongside of you. So that is my tips for management there. And that is what I have to share. And Daniela, are you coming back up here to close this out? Or
I'm going to ask everybody to give Timothy a round of applause before you do that.
All right. We got through that.
Thank you, Timothy.
Sure.
I felt like this was a really interactive session. If there are any questions left over,
we
do have time for questions.
There's some more niche use cases out there.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe they'll just grab you afterwards and talk to you.
Yeah, what's up?
Yes.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Danielle, can I borrow your computer?
Absolutely.
Can we, yeah, I think if that'd be helpful, we can absolutely do kind of a live demo. Are we ready to do that? Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That would be helpful. And that would answer the other question of like, what is this? Why do we need it? The interface that you're looking for is basically a linear looking deal, right? So like each trigger and action is a block that you then can step into and configure. Do you have Zapier on your computer? Like, do you have an account?
No, but do you know the login for the Element one?
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know why I said that into my phone. You guys are seeing like the sausage getting made here.
Yeah, I'm sure we can like thing like screenshots, right?
I feel like to like it might be saved. My password might be saved for the customer success. So.
Oh, okay.
You've tried that one?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
I started typing Zapier into your URL bar and it is loading something.
It is? Yeah. Okay.
Could be dangerous. I'm going to move you over to the dedicated Wi-Fi. Wait. I'm ready, Sarah, if you want to switch over. Maybe I am. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so even if we can't log in, we can definitely still visualize what we're looking at. So yeah, here's a great example. This is what your interface looks like. So to give you that kind of mental model of, did that open up? Sorry. Maybe.
Stop checking your email.
Yeah. Try to load an image over here. Maybe switch Wi-Fi networks again. Let's see. I'm not even going to right click. You might be able to make some sense of that image there. Yeah, I'll just zoom in on it a little bit. But basically, every step that you take across every different platform that you're integrating with has a box that is corresponding to some action. right? So that action is going to be something like update for element, update custom field, right? So if you wanted to write a specific value to a custom field, you'd be able to have a step for that. And then within that, you could configure it to write whatever value. The steps prior to the current step, so if you've got a trigger or if you've got steps that are coming prior, all of those steps have some sort of data related to them. Maybe that's the student's element ID. Maybe if you're trying to calculate something into a calculated field or a custom field, you would have those values that were coming from whatever other systems. So those are going to be available to you as well. And you reference them within your current step, and you can perform whatever function you need to get to the value that you're looking for. You're also seeing an example here of branching logic. So just like in element workflows, there's conditions where if you have some sort of criteria that's based on what you've accumulated worth of data so far, you can configure a condition to split off some sort of behavior. So if they match criteria, they move on this way. If they fail criteria, they move on the other way. Same concept as element workflows. Same linear process. So it's not just like a random set of things happening all at once. It is a linear process. And then there's also, you mentioned like what's the difference between an element workflow and Zapier? Because I mentioned Zapier has all the same actions that an element workflow has. So you could effectively rebuild all of your element workflows in Zapier if you were connecting third-party platforms into that process. So if you were, for whatever reason, using ChatGPT to augment your campaigns or enrich data, or maybe you were calling like the Google Maps API to enrich your address data to make sure everybody has a zip code, stuff like that. That could all be done within Zapier as opposed to Element, because Element does not currently support making external actions like in other platforms. Yeah? You were not aware that we're making sense there? Yes, sir. There's a video. You want to watch the video really quick? Let's see what we can pull up here. So, looks like we might be having loading issues. I apologize for that. But there's some other interesting concepts that exist within a Zapier flow that I want to put you on. The first one is iteration. So one of the limitations within Element is that each workflow action or each workflow session is specific to one user. So one user is always executing the same series of steps. With Zapier, you can bulk export and iterate over a list of students. So if you pulled a list of 50 students from Element through an export, right, you could go over that list and perform some sort of computation or set of actions to pass all that data to wherever it needed to go. All right, we're having trouble loading here. I'm hesitant to try to pull a video, but that'd be fun. We could like sit down and watch a video. I'd love to take any other questions though, if you want to talk through any specific things you're working through. Well, hold on, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Sure, great. Yeah. Yeah, so the SIS is definitely tricky. Most SIS systems, so we're talking like Colleague Banner, Populi, Anthology, do not have open APIs or do not have easy integrations with those APIs. So there, as far as I'm aware, there is not currently any integration options between, or I should say native integration options for SIS systems. Bit tricky there. You could, so if you're on like Colleague or Banner, there is a system provided by Lucian that sits on top of that provides an API. It's called Ethos. That's what we use when we write managed integrations. So if you've talked to the Element team about a managed integration with your student information system and you're with Colleague and Banner, we've definitely mentioned Ethos. You have access to that, presumably if it's in your Lucian package. And if you were comfortable, you could try to configure Ethos and then use Zapier to make requests to it. But I would say it'd be very complicated. Yeah. So you also, like when you're writing to the SIS, you run into security concerns and stuff like that. So you want to be careful about what you're exposing to your automation systems. Great question, though. Yeah, back there. Yeah, absolutely. The trick about Zapier is that like it's private accounts, right? So there is some sort of like cloning function, but that would have to be at the owner's discretion. I would say if you have created a Zapier of automation flow in your account or in Power Automate, definitely add that to the Element community. That's the community that's through Circle. I think there'd be a lot of folks that'd be interested in that. But to my knowledge, we currently don't have documentation on what others are doing because it's a third-party system. So, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And the same concept could be pulled over to Outlook. If you're running Outlook, they both have sets of actions. So, yeah.
I would even chime in and say there's a set list of actions in Zapier where you can start, and they have things like events, appointments, and like start there, and test a few and link your Element account there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, setting up Zapier within Element is very easy.
We have an expert in the audience here. Our chief product officer, Ty, is going to chime in with a suggestion here.
That's totally correct regarding Banner and Colleague, but actually, hot off the presses, we're currently working on a native integration to pull course and student data and grade and enrollment data from Banner or Colleague as well. So that will supplement everything that you learned about today.
Via Zapier?
Not via Zapier. Oh, that'll be an independent, separate thing. You could have things flow into Element, and then that triggers actions in Zapier as well. So just wanted to add that onto what Tim said. Thanks.
For sure.
Presses. Oh, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Grab Timothy, grab Ty. Do not grab me on this topic. I will not be able to help you, but we'll be back here at 4:00. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.